This really is a sort of a giant prayer and meditation. Being convinced we are at step three, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him. Just what do we mean by that, and what do we do? The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. So here, you're going to ask yourself, you're going to stop and say, okay, have I always been in collision with something or somebody, drinking or not? So you sort of stop and have a bit of a meditation on that. How how am I doing? Today I'm doing pretty good. I haven't collided with anybody yet. But the day's early and I haven't been outside. All right. Um, each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. So as we read this, put these to yourself as a question, whether you, when drinking or not, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. This was very true for me all the time. It was, and I then went into a career of radio and television where I was sort of in charge. So I literally arranged the lights and all the players, and they hated me. That's why I got a cat. It's the only one that didn't give me a hard time. And this one is not alive. This one's dead. Ah, if his arrangements would only stay put. If only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, our actors may sometimes be quite virtuous, may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits. So you ask yourself, I had to ask, I hated reading this at first because it described me to a T. I was both. I was, modest and self-sacrificing, and then I could be mean and egotistical and totally selfish. And I try not to be dishonest, but when we're drinking, so what usually happens, the show doesn't come off very well. Begins to think life doesn't treat him right. He decides to exert himself more. Yes, I did that. So it's like doubling down. We're seeing a lot of that in politics right now these days. He becomes, on the next occasion, still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit him, admitting he may be somewhat at fault. He is sure that other people are more to blame. You are. If you didn't do, I wouldn't. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is his basic trouble? Is he not really, okay, a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Is he not the victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants, and do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can out of the show? Isn't that the way it is? You end up being mean to people if you're a boss or whatever, you're mean, and then they just start stealing from you. Is he not, even in the best moments, the producer of confusion rather than harmony? Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. He's like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining about the sad state of the nation. We have that. This was written in the 1930s, and we're reading about this very, occasion currently in 2024. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century, politicians and reformers who sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave, the outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, and the alcoholic us, who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever our protestations are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity. So here it is. Selfishness and self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our trouble. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity, we step on our toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Some of us, sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that sometime in the past we've made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So this, of course, when we're drinking, and even when we quit drinking, we still do it. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves. And the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. But me? No, not me. Above anything, we alcoholics must be rid of selfishness. We must, or it kills us, and God makes that possible. There often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without His aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them, even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. Okay, here's the what, how, and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter, in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal, we are his agents. He is the Father, we are his children. When they were writing this, they took a lot of this out of the Bible, a lot of it out of the book of James and other places too. Uh, Maybe Terry can help us with that. Most ideas are simple, and this was the key, concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we passed through through freedom. Hey Terry, I was going to ask you a question before I what is this new and triumphant arch that they talk about, the keystone? Is that something out of the Bible also, or not? You have to unmute. You're muted. You can unmute. There you go. There you go.
Okay,
There you Yep.
I'm unmuted now.
Yep.
No?
Yeah. I can hear you fine.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's just the New Testament, but they did use it for Jesus when they talked about building the Christian church, which was not so much a physical building early on. They didn't have any physical buildings for 3 centuries. It was more that he was that he would hold it together. In other words, everybody, he'd be the keystone of the arch. He'd be the top piece, and every part, all the other stones in the arch would sort of lean in that direction. It was an architectural idea, and
All right.
I think that Bill Wilson took the same thing when he was talking about the higher power. That as long as you think you're the higher power, you're just going to crumble. And that's the stop playing God. Stop trying to control everything. I mean, that's what people say. Well, God controls stuff. Well, when we play God, we try to control things. Even if you don't believe in God, you still act like a God, trying to control things. And you can't control a lot of the outsides. All you can control is your response.
All right. I'm going to keep reading here, and I'll just call on you if you can help with some of this. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things, or you can interject too, followed. We had a new employer. Being all powerful, he provided what we needed, and we kept close to him and performed his work well. So that's something else too. I got out of the Bible and out of the church. That God, he is the Father, we are his children. He is the director. He's our new employer. Can you talk about that? Anything on that? Terry, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So what about that? He's he's the Father, he's the employer, the director, and we're now working for God.
Well, I think that just those kind of words can bother some people. I think it's more like we're working with God. We're cooperating. I think that's the key. We're cooperating. That is, we've discovered this power and we cooperate. Well, how do we cooperate? Well, it was a lot of what you just read. You can't have two bosses. Uh, so there's one boss, if you will, the higher power, and it directs you. And it says, how does it direct you? Well, if you follow the steps, eventually through 12 steps, you'll figure out how to get directed. You'll figure out what's the next right thing to do, it says in the big book.
More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. And here it is, as we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. We were reborn. And some people call this AA's conversion experience from self to God. Anything on that, Terry?
Yes, a lot of people start out in recovery saying, I don't believe in God. What they're saying is they don't believe in a thing that is a separate something that has a space, a place where he or she or it lives. But what you just read was not God the noun, but God the verb. They become aware of a presence. Presence is action. Presence is dynamic. It's not a thing. It's not some place. You become aware of, well, that's why we call it a higher power, not a higher thing. It's an energy. And energy is, if you would, everywhere. And so we come to discover this energy, and he uses the word presence.
So then they go on, yeah. So this was the part that I found the most profound for me because as we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, we became conscious of his presence. We began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. And I mean, I distinctly remember when that happened to me, that I was felt completely free and that something else had come upon me and stayed. In this meeting, most of the people in here have a relationship with God. I don't know that there are a lot. Sometimes some of the very, very new people might be fighting it, but this is a meeting where, I mean, we just did the second step yesterday. Um, I'll just read this last piece here. So Bill writes, we were now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker, as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. Thy power, thy love, thy way of life, may I do thy will always. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready and we could at last abandon ourselves to him. Um, and Bill sort of wrote this in King James sort of English. Any thoughts on this third step prayer?
Yeah, I think that it, and Bill Wilson talks about this other places. We stop trying to follow our own will. We discover that our will is broken. Our willpower doesn't work because it wants stuff that isn't good for us. That's a broken willpower. And we've tried to get things that don't work for us. That's why we're in Alcoholics Anonymous. We no longer can do what we want to do, which is drink every day as much as we want. And you can't do that anymore. And we can no longer be selfish and self-centered. Now, we didn't see it as that. We just said, this is what I want. Well, by the time you get to what you're reading, you realize there's self-centeredness, there's selfishness, and we can't seem to let go of that all by ourselves. So we have broken willpower. So a higher power is a will that works in our favor. In other words, if we follow the higher power, which is shown through the steps, we will begin to, we turn our will in our life. We say, I turn
Mm.
my broken will over to a higher power. I turn my life. That's a big decision. And if you don't get to step 4, it's not much of a decision at all. I mean, you're not really turning, you're just saying the words. But so one of the ways we turn our will in our life over to God is to get on to step 4, which is making those lists, resentment lists and all.
Yeah, I had to really settle down with these pages and read them. And actually, what I recommend to people here is read them every day for 30 days. Turn this into a prayer and a type of meditation and see if it starts to sink in. Because when I read it, Terry, if I just read it once or twice, it would just sort of bounce off of me.
Sure.
And then I did do a fourth step and a fifth step. And then 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 were made big differences making amends. And then finally, step 10 and 11, which was more prayer and meditation. And before I knew it, actually, do you know that this led me back to church? When I was drinking, I would drink every night and I would sit in my bedroom up on the hill near the university and I would just say, God, I'll do anything if you can um, help me quit drinking. It's the only time I could pray when I was drinking. And then in the morning, my thought was, I wish I was dead. This is so horrible. But I felt like he had answered my prayers. And then I get to AA, and it took me some time to do this, to let God sink in and start to change me. Um, and in this meeting, in this group, we try to lead people right to it, right to these steps, and um, basically say you don't have to suffer for a really long time if you can get to God early on. Back over to you, Terry.
Well, I think that's why we tell people to keep coming back. I think the experience of a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people, is they go to meetings and they don't do much, but they keep going to meetings and they tend not to drink on the day that they went to the meeting. That's not just a coincidence. That's a higher power. And I think going to the meeting is a bit of step 3, turning your will and your life over. Because an alcoholic thinks of a lot of reasons not to go to a meeting, because our tendency is to kill ourselves with chemicals, drink, and drugs. So that we go to a meeting is really a higher power at work, because, as I say, our willpower is broken. So every meeting you show to shows that the higher power is at work. And eventually, if you go enough, you'll really begin to do the steps. And then you'll look back and say, gee, why didn't I get that in the first time? Well, we're so debilitated, if you will. It's as if you go to see the doctor about some physical something and they tell you to do things that are so different from what you've done. You don't do them right away. And then you get tired of being sick. And you finally said, I think I'll do what the doctor asked. It's the same thing. So just keep showing up.
And for those people that don't know, you're an alcoholic, right? You have
Sure.
39 years. Could you just tell us your story like in 2 minutes or less?
Yeah, I was thinking of killing myself, and I thought, well, I'll either do that or call AA. And they said, go to a meeting. So I went to a meeting. I want to kill myself. And so I was frightened. And I went to a meeting, and all I really did was go to meetings. I didn't really do anything. I probably got a big book. I mean, either I bought one, probably I bought one, but I didn't do anything. I don't. I maybe I read it some, but I didn't really do anything. I didn't get a sponsor. I didn't work the steps. I didn't. But I kept going to meetings, and I didn't drink. And I look back on that after I finally got a sponsor and started doing the steps. As well. I went to meetings and I didn't drink. And that was a big step. I didn't get sober. I got dry, but I wasn't drinking. And I think that was very important. And when I would go to fewer meetings or not go to meetings, then my life really spiraled downward. So I'm a walking experience of meetings. How many meetings are you going to go to each week?
39 years. So you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, well, but I don't think of 39 years so much. I think some people, I don't know, if you're married for 39 years, yeah, I don't know how you think about it since I've not been married. I've been a priest for 47 years, but mostly I just stay in the now. I don't think about how long it's been. I just think of, well,
Mm-hmm.
today, if I start saying, well, I've got all these years of sobriety, I'll be fine today.
Mm-hmm.
No, alcoholism doesn't go away. It just uh it waits. And but staying in touch with AA, higher power steps, speed of service, that sort of stuff, that'll keep you sober.
All right. Bob, go ahead. Question or comment?
Yeah, I'm very new to this. I'm just curious what the recommendation is in terms of how often you go to meetings. Is it
Come
strongly
here. Here's the deal. Come here every day for 5 days, right here, and then we'll take care of you. And if you like it, we'll put you to work. How about that? So just show up at this meeting every day for 5 days and see how you like it. And try not to drink try not to drink between meetings. Try to stay alive and come to meetings. We have a lot of very new people that come here every single day, and you're one of them. But this meeting absolutely works. So let's go around the room and we, if you have any questions or comments for Terry or on the third step. So Lisa, over to you. Hi, what step are you on right now? Do you have any comments or questions on the third step?
Um, I have a lot of comments not pertaining to this meeting. I'm working on, I do my daily reflections, daily prayer in the morning, meditation, then I reflect on my day at the end of the day. Continuously, just because it's always in my face these past months, is just working on my resentment in particular, you know, dealing with a couple of things that I just have to keep reminding myself that resentment it's not going to get me anywhere. So I'm working on
Sooner,
page
sooner or
5.
later sooner or later they break. And when you have that resentment or that person in your life, it makes it harder, but stay sober. You have 101 days, but try to stay sober, and it eventually breaks, in my experience. Um, let's go over to Ron. Ron, what are you working on? Questions or comments on the third step?
Well, I'm working on step one was my last assignment, the first half of step one, and but I try to do one, two, and three each morning in my morning prayer and meditation. I try to turn my will and my life over to God as I understand Him right now, and
Yep.
that's
How's your relationship with God?
it's no, I believe that He's there for me. He's no, I think He's guiding me at times. Do I reach up and grab self-will frequently throughout the day? I do. I was thinking of the couple times that I acted upon self today. Where was I selfish? Where was I egotistical at work? I am a supervisor, and And where could I have been maybe a little more helpful and not been so egotistical today?
There you go. That's really what they talk about here. And whenever I've done that myself, been pretty helpful to me. How about you, Terry? Any comments on what Ron
Yeah,
said?
from what Ron just said, you become less combative with your fellow human beings. You just become less combative. And I think that's the kind of language we use as we become less self-centered, less self-imploded, and more caring about others. And the way I look at it is the world becomes less about me. I stop battling other people to get something. And it really does. I used to think, well, if I don't get what I want, my life's going to be terrible. And my life was terrible, and I still wasn't getting what I thought I wanted. And so I just find I'm less combative. You let some things just be, and then things that need to be changed, you learn how to do it without making it into a war.
Okay. Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, so love everything that Father, I'm sorry, the name Father Terry
Terry,
had
we'll
to
just call
say.
him Terry here.
Yes, okay, that Terry had to say. And I for my homework, I'm on step 3. I was last asked to read or Bill Wilson's story and have 5 takeaways, but I don't know what else I need to do for step 3.
Well, we just did step 3, and so now you can just meditate on that for a while. Go ahead, Gwen.
Yes, this is a question for Father Terry. Um, you had mentioned just a few minutes ago that try to stay in the now and you don't look at, how many years or months or whatever. What is the best way for you to stay in the now? Or what is your best advice for someone like me who tends to always be thinking a week or a month or a year ahead of time?
I think what has been key for me is when I wake up in the morning, before I get out of bed, and I try to get a decent night's sleep, which means you go to bed at a certain time. When I wake up, before I get out of bed, I thank God for some things. So I basically start out with gratitude. This day was not owed to me. I didn't have a right to it. And it's so in a sense, it's a gift. And thank you, Lord, that I woke up today, and thank you for what I have. I mean, if health or a nice bed or a good night's sleep, you really keep it very simple. And then I ask that I don't do certain stupid things, which each of us learns after a while. What are the stupid things we tend to repeat? That I don't do this or that. That I'm more kind and loving. And today, and I got the list of stupid things from step 4 and 5, and then I got the list of good things to do from just working the rest of the program. So I have my list of my shortcomings, the things that I tend to go towards when I'm not on my toes, if you will. And so I think I start out right away before you get out of bed with gratitude, and that helps to keep you in today.
Nice. How about you, Rebecca?
Yeah, step 3, I intertwine step 3, identifying with the actor who wants to control everything, and step 10, 11. So I go back to step 3 and this third step prayer daily. For me, it's really difficult to have that balance when you are a so-called boss for the day. You have new employees and you're frustrated, and I find myself becoming that actor wanting to control everything. And there are things I need to say. For me, it's about saying it the right way, because it comes off as harsh because I'm stressed. So I kind of meditated and prayed And I found a way to say things now with sort of humor, trying not to get sarcastic humor, but kind of being settled. It helps me because when you're stressed and you're tense, everyone around you, it catches. So
Perfect.
again, it's a hard balance for me daily with what I do.
You have
Um,
90 days today.
yeah,
Congratulations.
thank
And
you. Thank
it
you.
gets easier. It gets easier. Emily, how about you?
Hey, Emily Addict. Um, this was a great reading. I really identified with that. I had to quit playing God because I'm one of those big time hypocrites I've had two alcoholics in my life that I have worked for 20 years trying to help them get sober and being very judgmental, I'm sure, about it. And then it ended up happening to me, or I let it happen, whatever. So I think God really humbled me through that. And now I have really walked through it and seen the struggles they've had. And it's just very interesting how life works.
All right. Glad you're here.
Thank
And,
you.
yeah, no, totally. How about you, Stacy? Any thoughts or comments on today's meeting so far?
It's good to hear from Father Terry and get an opinion from someone that, I mean, I don't have any personal experience really with religious figures, so it's good to hear and know that they're not God. They are people that have lives just like we have, and he's here to help us now get through our struggles.
What do you say to that, Terry?
What I'm thinking about is remission. If you had cancer, for instance, and somebody said, okay, we've done this, this, and this, and now you're in remission. You know what remission is. It could come back, and they tell you what you need to do to try to stay in remission. And I would think quite a few people would be frightened enough that they would do whatever the medical people told them to stay in remission. Well, you have to be a little bit, you have to really hit bottom in Alcoholics Anonymous because that makes you frightened enough to work at this every day. We're in remission, we're not cured. So we have to stay with it on a daily basis. And somebody mentioned about employees, and what struck me was right now you're not going to physical meetings, you're meeting online. But I learned from a lot of physical going to meetings where you walk into a room and there are other people, that there's going to be people who are going to bug you just by the way they act, and learning how to respond to that rather than ignore it. And that takes a lot of doing. Usually you need a guidance like a sponsor. But so the thing to keep in mind is other people may be sick too. They may not be alcoholics, but they may be sick too in other psychological ways, and they just happen to be your employees. So rather than say, why don't you shape up, which you probably wouldn't do to somebody who you knew was otherwise sick, you'd be gentler. Just remember the other people are kind of sick too. And so you want to help them, but how can you do that in a gentler fashion and not just yell at them, tell them to shape up?
Uh, Thank you. Preston, how about you? Thoughts, comments on
Uh, Preston, alcoholic. Just in a nutshell, yeah. Step three. I think I spend the most time now with step three. I think really just like just speaking for myself, like my ego has the hardest time with step three. Um, so it's like it's just the process of letting go of humility and like Father Terry said, desperation. You know, even though I'm not drinking now, like Ron talked about too, throughout the day, I still get in self will. And then for me, like enough pain with that, like my character defects come out. And then when I do my nightly at night, I'm like, man, I acted like an ass today towards everyone. And so then, I find myself just, trying to, um, I don't know, I turn to God and, I don't know. It's hard to put it into words a lot, step three, but pretty much just, the process of letting go of like everything and,
I think
knowing
I'll tell
that
you,
I'm,
I'll tell you something.
yeah,
I think you're doing really great. I've been watching you
thank
work
you.
on this really, really hard, and you know, you're in there, 100%, uh,
Thank you.
doing it. Hey, Jeff, how about you? What are your thoughts or comments? You have 39 years also. Not that that matters, according to Terry.
Jeff Alcoholic, South Florida. Thank you, Jen. Wow. I got to come clean on this. Uh, I knew I was an alcoholic, and I knew I had to do something about it. But when I came to a few meetings, then I started reading this big book, wonderful book. I came to page 63. I blew it off until I got to that point. Relieve me of the bondage of self. And I thought to myself, Christ, yeah, that was step number two. It's my bondage that makes me a slave to alcohol. But step number three, I didn't reach right away because that I was thinking at that point, well, we get this self better. Hey, and I won't be bonded by my old self. Not so. I got to give myself over. That's step number three, and that took a while. Oh no, it took me, but it came. But I have to come clean on that. I blew the whole thing off until I reached that point, and the whole thing is offered to me right there. Doesn't always come the first day. What can I tell you?
Thank you. Hey,
Thank you.
Lex, you had your hand up. What was your comment? Or 37
Hi,
days, Pennsylvania. Hi.
I'm Lex. I'm an alcoholic. I have a question for Terry regarding step three. How do you fully trust God so that you feel you can turn your life over to Him? Because there's a lot of ways that I do trust God, but there's still that bit of resentment and distrust that I'm finding it hard to shake.
What I have found helps in terms of the trust level is to follow the suggestions that you get in the literature, such as the Big Book or the 12 and 12. And as you do that, and Jann is trying to help you with meetings, steps, and you find your life getting a little bit better, and then a little bit more better, and then maybe a crisis comes along, and you use the AA way of responding to crisis, which you learn by working it, and things are not so bad, you begin to trust more. In other words, the trust builds by the work we do. There may be initial trust, which you add because, well, it comes with desperation. What else have I got? I'm killing myself here. But then as you work the steps, that worked. Or someone's just said, well, I was blowing things off until I got to this point in step three, reading, and suddenly I says, yeah, well, because you kept reading. So I think just do the work and trust will build because you'll begin to see your life getting better.
Over to you, Leslie. Thoughts or comments, questions? You and God, how are you doing?
Oh, well, I think the third step prayer is like, the whole program. I say it every morning after I do the daily reflections. And but I have to do it during the day, and say your will, not mine. And just keep coming back to that because my day takes off and meeting with patients and going and it keeps kind of moving further and further away from your will. I have to keep bringing it back to the front, but hanging in there. And
Good.
thank you, Father Terry, for your time.
Well, 10 days. I felt when God, like some people call it a fresh wind or a new awakening. Bob Dylan called it a new morning. There was this, I had this it just sort of happened through the third step for me. And so a couple things here before we have Matt read the promises. So Terry, what is so we support Terry, he's a Paulist priest. So our group actually helps support him. And then Terry, what is your Venmo?
Terry, capital TERRY dash Ryan, capital RYAN dash 25.
Terry dash RYAN. Did you say dash 25?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's all caps? The name is
No,
all
just
caps?
the
Okay,
T
just
and
the
the
first
R.
letter?
Just the T and the R.
Just the T and the R, yeah. This is at Venmo, and there it is right there. So if anybody wants to make a contribution to him, that will be fine. So just so everybody knows, you're a Paulist priest. You're in San Francisco. You live with the Paulists there and work there, and also at a monastery up in Aspen. And you're here in Boulder sometimes too, correct?
Yes, I am watching sports with you.
If anybody wonders how a Catholic priest got in AA, so Terry comes over to watch the Rockies, football, whatever it happens to be. We just have to make sure that we're on the same side, both cheer for the Rockies. And let's see, so,
Hopeless.
you know, they need more players, prayer, whatever they need. Okay, Matt, over to you with here come the promises.
Okay, men alcoholic. These are the promises on page 83 of the big book. If we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We'll comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We'll lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We'll suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They'll always materialize if we work for them.
Okay, and here comes the serenity prayer. It goes like this. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom
to know the
difference. So this meeting is officially over. If anybody has any questions, let's see here. You can unmute and ask away if you want to. Questions about this meeting or AA? Any of that? Always recommend you come for 5 days in a row. If you're new here, see how you like it.
I have a question for Terry.
Yep.
So what's your suggestion, Terry, in I'm 76 days sober, working on approaching step 4 here eventually, but I believe in God, I believe in living in God's will. However, several times throughout the day, I tend to switch back to Aaron's will. And in those moments, I just try to say a short prayer and coast, but I'm still kind of like a toddler learning to walk. Do you have any suggestions on how to do that better, maybe?
Well, what you need to, I think the important thing is to see how much light there is rather than darkness. You're doing exactly the right thing. Whereas before, you just went in the wrong direction and kept going until you just got ruined. So this way you're catching yourself. And I think what's going to happen over a period of time is you'll catch yourself sooner and sooner to where you get to the point where you'll say, oh, I see this coming and I'm not going to do it, as opposed to I'm halfway into it And now I say the prayer, thank you, God, I didn't go all the way into it. And so that's how it'll be. You'll get to the point you'll say, something will happen that doesn't go my way, and I'll just, and then I'll say, oh, self-will. I see, Terry. But I haven't heard it hurt anybody else. I've just embarrassed myself, makes for a little humiliation. And I says, okay, God, I haven't yelled at anybody on the phone. I says, okay, I haven't caused damage, but it helped me to realize that I need to keep working. So sometimes when we start when we have a little bit of reaction in the wrong direction, it's actually what I would call a grace, a gift. It's reminding us, oh, work that program, you're an alcoholic.
Beautiful. Great. Thank
Perfect.
you. So appreciate you. And you too, Jan Dog. Thanks, you guys. Have a great evening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, glad you're here. This was fun. If anybody else has any questions about AA or this meeting, feel free to ask.
I just have a question about the verification thing. Do I get an email back for like the confirmation?
Did you email? Yeah, you'll get a confirmation. Did you email us? Would you put that email address up again, please, Matt?
Yeah, I emailed and then I put like
Okay.
in the title AA meeting and then my name next to it.
Yep. We'll go up. We'll go in there and we go through them every couple of days and send confirmation. So you'll